Now, a recent United Nations global report on food crises has projected that the number of people who face high levels of acute food insecurity in Nigeria is expected to increase. Nigeria, of course, is faced with worsening food insecurity. The report projected that 26.5 million people in Nigeria, or 13% of the analyzed population of 209 million, are projected to face high levels of acute food insecurity between June and August of 2024. Recently, the National Bureau of Statistics showed food and non-alcoholic beverages continue to be the biggest contributor to inflation in May. Food inflation, which accounts for the bulk of Nigeria's inflation basket, rose to 40.66% from 40.53%, although those are month-on-month numbers. That's year-on-year for the 40%. Now, to discuss this more in depth, we have joining us from our Abuja studios is Ade Adefeko, who is the Director of Corporate and Regulatory Affairs at Olam Agriculture. And thanks for joining us. Good evening to you. So what's your thoughts on that projection as far as Nigeria facing this acute food insecurity and almost 26 million people being impacted?
Thank you very much, Rotus, for having me. It's important for us to dimension the issues. Let's first look at this. Population growth is growing at what you call geometric progression, while food production is at arithmetic. So you can see the slight anomaly there. And so that answers your question to a very large extent. Are we food insecure? To a large extent, yes. And let me speak to something quickly as well, as a bit of, to set the context. In 2014, there's something known as the Malabo Declaration. The Malabo Declaration, Malabo, of course, is the capital of Equatorial Guinea, which was a former Spanish colony, to be distinguished from the other two Guineas. Guinea-Bissau, which is a former Portuguese colony, and of course, Guinea-Conakry, which is a former French colony. So the Malabo Declaration speaks to the fact that agricultural budgets should be about 10% of total budget. Nigeria in the last, let's just take a 3-year history, has been, our budget provision has been between 2.1% to about 1.3%. So rather than increasing, it's dwindling. So in the last 3 years, budget provision has been very, very poor in terms of what has been earmarked to agriculture, unfortunately. Of course, this is probably due to other competing concerns by government, healthcare, education, defense, and the likes. But food security, as you know, is an integral part of national security. And I think we understand that fact, which is why you probably see at most fora that the National Security Advisor is always at meetings that have and discussions that have to do with food security. So do I agree with the stats? Yes. Food inflation is at an all-time high. You just spoke to the fact that we're talking about 40%. You know, there's always a saying that in God I trust, every other thing is data. So we work with data. I mean, our population is around about 229 million. So that's a lot, okay? And you've mentioned, you spoke to the fact that we have about over 26 million who are food insecure, which is very true. And I think that is something that I think we need to address, and we need to address, full blown.
Well, so I mean, I guess there's a demand side and a supply side. I wanted to get your thoughts on President Buhari's comments during the Eid holidays, where he said we've got to do something about our growing population, suggesting that perhaps it's expanding faster than we can handle. Do you think family planning, awareness campaigns in rural areas in particular, based on, I guess, the number of children that people are having on the lower income scale, is that something that should be addressed, or should we be focusing on the supply side and producing more food, regardless of how many kids the average Nigerian is having?
Rotus, you know, what I usually try not to delve into is areas where I don't have expertise. I'm not, I don't belong to that school or that demography that understands the population cycles and the likes of it, okay? So people having kids, more than 3, more than 4, I don't want to delve into that, but I will speak to the fact that, yes, we need to do more in terms of production, okay? And for us, I'm one of those who believe that you can only be competitive where you have comparative advantage. Nigeria has comparative advantage in a lot of staples, particularly. But How well we harness that has always been the challenge. So that is what I think we need to work on assiduously. And what usually happens, what the problem is right now is farmers are facing what I will call a few challenges here. So we have problems of cultivable hectares, okay, which is born out of the fact that we do not have enough inputs. Government needs to come up with fertilizer, inputs, and take care of infrastructure, okay, very, very important. And, people talk about security. Yes, security is an issue, but security is not the only issue. Security is a problem, but I don't think security is as bad as it was probably 4, 5, 6 years, prior. But there must be a concerted effort on the part of government. You see, there are 3 things that must be done. Government must be strategic, government must be intentional, and government must be deliberate. So that needs to happen. And that needs to happen in a very, 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 very cohesive way. And that brings me to the discussion that the organized private sector, particularly in the agribusiness ecosystem, needs to be spoken to. We have a lot of land, which half of the time, inputs is a problem, like I spoke to. Fertilizer is a problem. Sometimes you have what you call fertilizer match problems. I mean, types of fertilizer used in some soils. For anyone who understands agriculture, agribusiness, you need to do what you call a soil test or soil mapping to understand what can grow on what soil. So those things are very, very important. So I don't know what has happened to our research institutes. Our research institutes have become more or less, all they do is recurrent expenditure, and they go on capacity building trainings abroad. But when they come back, I don't know what happens with the outcome of their research. So we need improved seedlings, okay? We need to improve seed varieties. Those varieties, the average varieties we have in Nigeria, talking about yields per hectare, is between 1.5 and 2.5. And the global average ranges from between 14 to 16%, sometimes in some crops, particularly in Asia and Latin America. Everybody talks about Africa being the new frontier and Nigeria being one of that. I think we need to just improve our farming practices and techniques.
Now that would involve machines, would it not? What about we're not manufacturing them here. So with mechanized farming, your average, the only brand I'm familiar with is John Deere. It's an American brand, I think. I mean, those things cost as much as a car. And then there's the issue of the skills to operate them, since majority of the farmers are subsistence farmers. So how do we navigate the mechanized farming aspect?
Very good question, Rotus. We need large-scale mechanization. And large-scale mechanization can only be done by the large multinationals. But you see, what the large multinationals must do is to have what you call nucleus farms. And when the large multinationals have the nucleus farms, they have the outgrower schemes or outgrowers who in turn, based on the seedlings and inputs you provide them, grow in their own little areas via their cooperatives, and you assist and support them. You see, government can speak to what they want to do, but you need doers. And the doers are the people who are doing the heavy lifting in the agribusiness sector, which is why, people usually don't talk about agriculture anymore. People talk about agribusiness because it's a business. It's a business. And those in that ecosystem, from farm to fork, very, 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 very important. 3 major issues have affected us food security-wise. First and foremost, cost of power is a major issue, okay? Cost of power is a major issue. Cost of fuel is another issue. So we've had, of course, on the monetary side, okay, a few, monetary policy is being, we've been trying to, like you always speak to, let the market find itself. Let's put it that way, price discovery, okay? We're still on that. But you see, we should, on a constant basis, have fiscal and monetary policy alignment. So what I think needs to happen right now is government needs to provide fiscal incentives. Everywhere else in the world, you subsidize production. What we tend to do is to subsidize consumption. That's a misnomer, and we need to get that right. So back to what I said, we need to incentivize, provide fiscal measures, have the large multinationals, have outgrowers. Look at my company, for example. I mean, we're the largest producer of rice and the largest miller of rice. Okay, we have a rice farm in Nasarawa. But the road to our farm in Nasarawa, which is Doma, 4,500 hectares, fully mechanized, okay? We supply 10 to 12% of Nigeria's rice needs. It's not enough. So have many more Olams, have 35,000 farmers who are in your outgrower program, and you can replicate that across board. It's very, very important for us to make sure that we synergize and we have that handshake.
Now, actually, on the rice, maybe you can help us. So I guess there's not enough Olams. Is that why a bag of rice is so expensive? Help us with the rice prices. Is it a supply issue and there are not enough of you out there producing enough of them?
To a large extent, it's a supply issue. Nigeria consumes round about between 6.5 and 7 million tons of rice. That's our consumption. We produce round about 4 million. So there's a deficit of about 3 million. Prior to, the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months, a lot of smuggled rice used to come in through the borders, okay? The likes of Benin Republic and all that. Apart from Nigeria, and I think probably South Africa, everybody, we're the only ones that consume parboiled rice, okay? The rest don't on the continent. So, and a lot of the rice that comes in through the borders are destined for where? They're destined for Nigeria. So there's been a lot of, smuggling coming in through different border routes. But for me, that's not even the issue. There's no abundance of paddy. Because people sometimes forget that the finished product is rice. The inputs for rice is paddy. Okay? And another mistake we make again is that we always like to sometimes put the cart before the horse. We always speak to our milling capacity. If you don't have enough rice to mill, you need rice or you need paddy to work those mills. And what I'm speaking to here is that we need to upscale. We need to upscale. And we need to do these things at scale, having different companies. They don't necessarily have to be multinationals, okay? Because a school of thought to now say, okay, you're speaking to multinationals to come and do that for you. No. Let us put our money where our mouth is. Let government involve players, companies that have done it. You see, telling me I will do it and I've done it are two different things. The investment in Nasarawa for us is a $160 million investment. It's been there for the last 12, 13, 14 years. Backward integration. So let us go back to the basics. Let's backward integrate. We are very competitive in many areas. For example, rice, cassava, yam, okay, cocoyam. We're the largest producers of all these things, but we have a problem. Post-harvest losses, preservation. We have silos. Those silos, are they functional? If they are functional, how functional are they? What is the strategic reserve you talk about vis-a-vis the population? Can this strategic reserve take care of, in an emergency scale, for 1 year? I don't think so. So I think we need to be very, very deliberate in how we formulate policies and think through them properly. So for me, it's not about, we know our problems, let's look for solutions. And anybody who comes up with solutions or advice, which is why I believe that the private sector, as an addendum, I'm the chairman of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry Industrial Group. So a lot of manufacturing concerns are struggling. They are struggling because of, for those who are in the food processing and agribusiness ecosystem, they are struggling with inputs, they are struggling with power, they are struggling with logistics. So, that joke that people always talk about, everything is based on logistics. So infrastructure is very, very important. Road networks need to be improved, rail networks need to be improved. But when you talk about rail networks, when you are taking something from the north to bring to the south, you need to take something back in return. Nobody wants to carry an empty wagon from, say, Lagos or from, say, Osun back to the north. If you are bringing something from the north, produce from the north, you need to be able to take something back to compensate for it. So you don't just take an empty wagon back to destination, and back to source. So that's basically what I'm speaking to.
A fantastic conversation, so we really appreciate, and this is a very important topic. Food is health, it's sustenance for the people. So thank you so much, Mr. Ade Adefeko, wearing two hats at the LCCI and also at Olam, for joining us to talk about how to improve our food supplies and bring food inflation down. We appreciate your time.